Hi, everybody. You have Donnie here from Eterneva. I'm so excited today. We have an amazing guest with us. Her name is Lauren Schneider, and she works as a clinical director at Our House Grief in Los Angeles. Lauren, I would love if you could introduce a little bit about yourself before we go into the session, but really excited to have you on today.
Well, I'm really excited to be here, Donnie. And now that we got past the technical difficulty, I am, as you said, the clinical director at Our House Grief Support Center. I've been running the child and adolescent program. Now I'm in my 18th year running it. And we have several different ways we work with children here. We have a camp for kids. We offer Camp Erin in the Los Angeles County area. We have a school-based program, and we also do groups for kids in our 2 locations here in Los Angeles.
That's fantastic. So a lot of your work is really around supporting families and children, and especially in times of grief. Is that right?
Yes, exclusively grief related to death of somebody close, in particular death of a parent or sibling, but other close family, and sometimes even a friend.
Yeah. Wow. Well, 18 years, I mean, that's quite a long time to be doing this, and you must have seen so many things over the years. But probably not this situation, this pandemic. And so I thought today would be super useful, especially for our audience out there, that they are families, especially families with children. They are experiencing difficulties in shelter in place. We would love to just know, how do we even start approaching a situation like this right now?
Right. It's definitely posed very unique challenges for families. And what we saw very quickly was that the grief that in a family, let's say where a parent had died within the last couple of months up to a year or a couple of years, was that the grief sort of on the hierarchy of needs fell to the bottom, and other needs took precedent for them in a way that we hadn't seen before. Basic needs took precedent, like to get food into the house and to get the kids up and running in distance learning programs at school. And then for their parent or guardian, many of whom had to work from home for the first time. So to balance roles of getting food into the house, getting their kids working, from home, and then them doing their own jobs as well, was an overwhelming task for what we see mostly are single parent families.
And especially like being a single parent, I can't even imagine having to take care of groceries, working, your child's at home, your child's trying to learn, you're trying to focus. I can only imagine like the compounding amount of responsibility, but also
Right.
it's harder than before to do what you needed to do. And even if it's new, it seems to be like a newer situation. How have you seen people be able to manage this, or how have you gone around that conversation right now too?
Well, for the first month, they were on a state of overwhelm, for sure. And so we were trying to provide support for them, but many times they weren't getting to the emails that we were sending or to return phone calls even. And we understood that they had other priorities. But we were hoping eventually that they would make time for their children's grief, because for us, what part of our mission is to make sure that that children don't fall through the cracks and that they don't grieve alone. And too often that happens anyways in families. And so now it's even a more likely that children are out there grieving alone because their grown-ups are so overwhelmed, or they're cut off from other people that they normally get support from in their life. Like somebody at school, their school counselor was maybe someone who was there for them, giving them support, but they don't have access to that person. or their grandparent who used to come and be with them after school while their parent or guardian was working, they can't come to the house anymore because they're sheltering some in another home. So now they don't have, I'm sorry, now they don't have the support from that person.
Yeah. Wow.
And so they're cut off from all these other people that gave them support, and much more isolated.
Yeah. I mean, it's wild to even think about these things that like, you're right. Like there's so many factors from grandparents and other caretakers that were probably in the picture that have left. But even just, I think there's something fascinating here is in the state of overwhelm. It's easy to forget, I think, what not only the parents, but the children are experiencing too. And it's, especially now, like maybe the children are overwhelmed as well. It's hard to explain what it's like to not be able to see your friends or go to school, or the challenges of learning online, especially in single parent families, especially if you don't have that access. I think, what are some ways that people can become aware, I think, maybe what their children are going through that maybe got pushed to the side because we were all just like, boom, because it happened all at once.
Well, people are having to pick their battles, so if they have to choose between supporting their child's grief right now or getting them to show up for their math lesson, or getting them to go to bed at a decent hour, the thing that's going to be sacrificed is helping them honor the memory of their dad or their mom who died. So the other things are definitely taking priority. And, I was just thinking about Mother's Day coming up, and what a hard time that is for families, whether mom or dad has died. It's a very, very hard time for our families. And, they're not going to have their grief groups to go to where they get that support. We're starting online grief groups. We're offering them now, but it's not easy for people to access those because they're still in this state of overwhelm. And if their tradition, let's say, Donnie, is to go to the cemetery, on Mother's Day, which is one of the busiest days at a cemetery, to bring flowers and stuff like that, and then go out to a restaurant that was their mom's favorite restaurant on that day. They're not going to be able to do those things because of the need to maintain physical distance and the restaurants being closed in most communities still in our country. So, those rituals that are part of the grieving process for people, that help them with their grief, are interrupted because of the global pandemic.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. And I think about that too. Every time we get closer to Mother's Day, it's always such a hard time for a lot of people, I think. And I think it's moving us to find other ways, I think, to maybe help people. And I would love, especially if you do have tactics, or if you've seen ideas of this in the past, how are some ways that maybe like an everyday person, for example, like me, can maybe reach out and help? Like I can even think of a few people right now, families and single parents that are sheltering in place. How can like a friend or a family member or someone support someone virtually? And also, how in general can we move some of these rituals to a space where maybe it's not physical anymore? Because it looks like we're going to have to find some replacements for some of these rituals as well, at least for now.
Yeah, well, places like our house and grief support centers in other communities too are posting ideas on their websites that families can do, in memory activities and things they can do together. Like we, maybe it's the birthday of the person who died, for example. We had posted an idea on our website that that a family could make an in memory collage together, which is a very nice. It's an easy activity. All it takes is some magazine clippings, and everybody could pick out pictures from magazines that remind them of that person and make a collage, and that would be a pretty thing that they could hang in their room, or keep in their memory box if they are making a memory box, or memory drawer even. It's just a simple project that people could do together, or just even, a lot of families are doing board games right now. There's a resurgence in families playing board games, which is a really good thing, because it's interactive rather than more screen time. But play the board game dad, if dad died, dad's favorite board game, but say it out loud.
Yeah.
Say, hey, why don't we play Monopoly? Because that was something that dad really liked to play with you guys, and mention the name of that person who died. And, let's do that together today. And because dad would really like it to know that you guys are still playing that game. And, so it always helps to say the person's name out loud. And then everybody's not grieving alone. They're doing it together. And even if for a minute you feel some sadness, you can share that sadness together and then move past it by doing something that will then feel good.
Yeah.
A lot of families, we're hearing, are adopting pets right now. Which is a really good thing. The shelters are emptying out in a lot of communities. Here in LA, I heard from a lot of parents in a parent night groups that we've offered that they've adopted pets. But on the other hand, the kids are afraid to go outside and walk these new puppies because they're afraid they're going to catch the virus. So there's both things going on. Something positive, they are getting something that's comforting to them, that's helping them cope with their grief, and also helping them cope with sheltering at home, which is so overwhelming for the adults and the children. Is comforting for the adults too. But then some of these children are afraid to go outside to play with their new puppies. So one mom said, I have to force her to go outside and walk the dog. And she's also knows that her daughter needs fresh air and exercise. So she's making her child go outside. And this is here in California where it's hot out, warm and sunny out. And, but the fear right now is such a big factor that our families are dealing with. The kids are always afraid that someone else is going to die once they've experienced the death. But now that it's like the fear is on 10 because of the contagious nature of this disease, they're even more afraid of someone else or themselves catching it.
Yeah. So you're so right. Like it really has kind of recentered us back into like our basic needs almost. Like, okay, how can we get food? How can we get through the day? How can we even go outside without, experiencing this overwhelm? And you're right. It's incredibly difficult to do that right now.
Yeah. And then even though it's challenging for the adults to have to, deal with all these different, different new roles and find balance and all that, it's even more important for them to do it because the world feels less safe and out of control for the kids than it did before the pandemic. Grieving kids need structure and routine more than ever to regain a sense that the world is somewhat safe. And, so parents have to have some structure. They have to have some routine. They have to set limits, and there have to be some boundaries between adults and children. And I'm hearing from our parents how hard that is to do that. Like one mom's like, my kids are up till 1 a.m. I don't, or one dad said to me, she sleeps all day and then while he's at work, and then she's up all night. and and he had this is a 13-year-old girl that's going to be graduating 8th grade, and he doesn't know what to do about it. And her mom died all in January, this girl. And so he's a single dad for the first time, and these are really hard things for him now to assert himself as her only parent, and say this isn't okay, but she's depressed, and and she's going to have to get back on a normal schedule. That's not going to work when it's time to go back to school. And so they need routine, they need limits set for them, to get that sense that the world is somewhat safe, so that they can start to venture out again when these orders start slowly to lift.
Yeah, I think that's so insightful. You're absolutely right. The need for structure, routine, and ritual. I mean, especially for children, I can feel it. Adults probably feel this way right now as well, but 100% that we need to, I think, remember those boundaries so we can feel somewhat safe and a little bit more comfortable than maybe we have been. But I would be fascinated to know if you have any other any resources or places that you can point people to who are looking to maybe reinstill new rituals, get off screen time and find other ways to connect with their family, anything in that regards that could help families in this time.
Yeah, I found a great resource this morning. There's the National Childhood Traumatic Stress Network. It's the initials are here. I have to look so I make sure I get it right. nctsn.org. If you go on there in their research section, they have the cutest book for kids. It's a storybook about a child's fears about the virus, that parents can read with their kids, probably up to age 10. They could read it together. It has a parent guide in it, to help them with all of the fears related to that. And that's not just for grieving kids. But there's great resources out there, for grieving families. The National Alliance for Grieving Children has incredible resources available. Their website is childrengrieve.org. We have a lot of resources on our website on how to talk to kids about death. We have a great reading list. People can order books. You can see great titles for death of a parent, death of a grandparent, death of a sibling. They're divided up by age and by who died in the family. If you want to get some really good titles of books that you could order from Amazon, our website is ourhouse-grief.org. And Eluna, ELUNA.org is the camp. The largest network of bereavement camps for kids, and they offer camps all year round. So once camps can be back functioning, hopefully by the end of August, by fall, people can look for camps in their community to send their kids to again. Because what kids need is they need to be around other grieving children that know what it feels like to have someone close to them that dies. And we don't know how many children are going to experience another layer of grief, because not only did they have someone in their family die before the pandemic, but then other family members will die because of COVID-19. So the grief camps are going to be really important, and grief centers like our house in other communities as well.
That's so wonderful, and I'm crossing my fingers that those camps are still open and that everyone can join in, because I think you're right. Like, being around people with a similar experience can be really compassionate and life-changing.
Right, and I have to say that people, when you picture camps, you think about little kids, but teens need them, if not as much more than younger kids, because For teens, so many of their needs are met outside the the family that they live with, because they're starting to pull away developmentally from the family unit and get most of their needs met from their peer group. And so they really need a peer group that they can identify with, and that is a peer group that have shared that experience of having a loved one die. And so our teen program, like at our camp, Erin, is extremely strong. And and then the teen groups that are in our school program are very, very strong, our school-based groups. So uh, advocate for your teen to get into programming too when the schools are open and doing more than online learning again.
100%. Well, Lauren, thank you so much. To everyone that was watching, this is Lauren Schneider from Our House Grief Center in Los Angeles, talking about supporting grieving families. You can find this episode on IGTV, and all links will be shared in a blog post as well. But Lauren, thank you so much for joining us. This has been wonderful.
Thanks for having me again, Donnie.
Awesome. Have a wonderful week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.